Welcome back, everybody. I'm Nick Lamb from Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and this is my friend.
Emery Wolf.
Actually, I'm not Nick Lamb. I can't go with it for that long, but I'm filling in his shoes, and I'm very honored to be part of it. Today, we're interviewing Kenton de Jong, and we're going to look into his travel blogging. And Emery, go ahead. You fire away. Tell me a bit more about him.
Well, before we get to Kent and Nick, I already messed that up, eh? Matt, I kind of want to know what's been going on with you lately. We haven't talked to you in a year on the show. What have you been up to?
Well, I have a contract with CBC. It will take me up to the end of February, and I've still been doing a little freelance on the side, and that's where I've been seeing you at the Rough Riders. Haven't done so much hockey anymore. Basically juggling that, I've done a little bit of RCMP depot troops and also did a bit of teaching at the university.
Nice. Keeping out of trouble then.
Yeah, keeping me really busy. I don't know whether it's probably putting me into a lot more trouble than anything. Yeah.
I see where you're going with that.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good though. It's good. It's better to be busy in this business than to not be, right?
Yeah, it's always the toss of two sides of the sword, really, isn't it? It's kind of feast or famine. I always feel like you've got to find that next job, and then it's really tough to say no to the next job. So I haven't felt I've got to my point in the career where I can say no. I'm always trying to say yes, and I just think by saying yes, it always leads you into other stuff. It doesn't necessarily make you better at it. It just leads you into more things. So, and I like the mystery of the industry, to be honest. It's always been fascinating in that sense. Behind the scenes, getting you into admission and different places and meeting people that you wouldn't normally meet, and just super interesting in that sense. I mean, look at you. I got to meet you, and you're an interesting character.
I think the same of you. Like I would have never met you without this stuff, right?
That's true. And it's funny because when you meet these people as well, you have this common sort of commonality and passion of what you do, and you've all come from sort of different backgrounds on it.
Yeah. And you collaborate together, and you're meeting for like a different purpose too. And it's always like the outcome of it or the reaction of it's always like so positive, right? Like, so take your job with CBC, you're going in and interviewing people, and you're almost like friends with that person when you're done.
Yeah, I think you can find that way. There was a project that I worked on in December and I really enjoyed, and I went back 3 times to see this person an artist do their piece, and every time it was just so nice to have a conversation, to turn the cameras on, then do the job, then turn them off, and just have that mutual respect about sort of craft, I guess. It was just nice, and to find out. I'm always inquisitive about people after the fact and find out, how did you get into it, or what did you do? I ended up working in the oil field, the very first thing I did in Canada when I got my papers. And this guy too had worked in the oil fields, and he is actually doing his own craft woodwork, just amazing, stunning stuff. And he's actually got something hanging in the stadium at the minute down at Iceville. It's these antlers, and it's very, very intricate, very detailed stuff that he's wood carved. Just beautiful and just so down to earth. Such a nice guy.
Yeah, relationships are what it's all about. Going back to what you said at the start of all this, Matt, joining us tonight is Kenton de Jong. He is a travel blogger in Saskatchewan. He's been doing it for some time. But he's also kind of like more than that too, because he's got his website up there. You can go and see. There's tons of travel advice, tons of places you can see and sort of figure things out. He's doing a show on Canadian unsolved mysteries, it's fascinating to hear the stories. He works a regular day job. He's got a lot going on, so it's kind of exciting to meet him today. So let's bring him in. Matt, joining us is Kenton de Jong. How are you doing, Kenton?
Good. How are you guys doing?
good. Another solid night to be recording a show.
Mhm.
We're gonna just jump right into it, Kenton. I kind of the first thing I want to get just for our viewers, I feel like people should know you. You've been around for a while doing your thing. Do you want to kind of explain what you do, how you maybe came about doing it, what maybe actually inspired you to start even?
Yeah, sure. So I've been doing my travel blog now for about 7 years, 6 years. It's been a couple years now. And I kind of started it out of high school. I went to Europe on a little like a 2 3 week trip. And then I went down to New York and Florida a couple years later. And then I went to Japan a couple years after that. And I wanted somewhere to put what I saw. Like I want to talk about, when I saw the Colosseum. I want to talk when I saw Hiroshima. I wanted to talk about this stuff somewhere. So I started my travel blog, and no one read it. No one really cared. And it was only until I started writing about Regina that people actually started reading my stuff. So it started off as like an international travel blog, but it quickly became like a local travel blog.
That's actually interesting. That's something I wouldn't have expect. Although it kind of makes sense though, right? Especially in this digital world, if you start thinking like a little more local, then everybody sort of gets around you and supports you a little bit, hey?
Well, everybody talks about Paris or they talk about London. No one talks about Regina. No one talks about Moose Jaw, right? When you see a headline about Regina, like, oh, that's where I'm from. See one about like Munich, you're not going to click on that. Well, unless you're from Munich or you care about Munich.
Yeah. So you talked about some of the places you've gone, like Hiroshima is a pretty cool place. What would be like the top of your list? You've gone to all these places. What's the place like when you look back, it's the one you always think of and you're like, man, that trip was the best one?
That's a tricky question because the trips are so different, right? Like when I went to Mexico City, I went there for a wedding. So that was a very nice, not my wedding, for a friend's wedding. So that was a really nice trip, but it wasn't my favorite. When I went to Chernobyl, that was a really emotional trip, but it wasn't my favorite, right? So that's a tricky question. I would say my favorite, since I have to pick something, would be when I went to Kingston, Ontario. It's supposedly like the most haunted city in Canada. So I spent like a whole week seeing all the haunted sites, and that was really cool. So I would say that, but it's a different kind of place than the other places I've been.
What about Kingston? Like, what made it so creepy? I think you have a whole post on this on your site too, don't you?
I have a couple, yeah. So Kingston, one of the big things about Kingston is how many penitentiaries are in Kingston. So like, it's a small city, right? I think it's smaller than Regina, maybe 200,000, somewhat around there. But it has, I think it's 6 penitentiaries around it. Some of them had terrible like serial killers inside these walls of these buildings, right? And now some of them have been dilapidated, and you can explore them and see them. You can go on guided tours, of course. But also, Kingston is known for their cadaver trade. So, like, there was a lot of executions in Kingston, and the bodies would go missing, and people would like sell them on the black market. So, Kingston has a lot of really dark history, and I love exploring it. And it was also the first capital city of Canada when they first established the country. So it has lots of like beginning Canadian roots to it as well.
So just talking about this kind of stuff too, like, so you deal a lot with this kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better term, the inner Mulder in me is like spooky stuff.
Yeah.
Is that like your own personal interest, or is it something you like specifically sought after in order to sort of differentiate yourself from other travel bloggers?
No, it's an interest of mine. There's other people who do this kind of thing, and I love working with them and talking to them and collaborating with them. But it is a niche. You're right. There's not a lot of people out there who do this. But I just find it interesting, and especially like how much dark history is out there that is like just under the surface that people just don't talk about. They know about it, but they don't talk about it. And I love finding that stuff. Like, good example is last year, I broke a piece on my blog about the old jail that used to be in Wascana Park, and about some of the executions that happened there. And like that blew up because no one talks about the old jail. No one talks about the executions that happened in Wascana Park or the burials in the park. Like that's not uncommon knowledge, but like people who know about it, they don't go around talking about it. So there's a lot of really dark stuff just under the surface. And I like seeing this stuff. And of course, I like seeing the absolutely terrible stuff too, like Chernobyl and Hiroshima and those things too.
Yeah, it's kind of neat too, like how you blend some stuff. So going into like the whole gamut of things you do. So you're a web developer as well,
Yeah.
and you actually built a video game at one point in time based around it.
Yeah, I used to do tours of the cemetery back of Regina Cemetery back in 2017, I guess it was. And the whole purpose of them was to raise money for a monument for the victims of the Spanish influenza. So once we raised enough money and the tours, the year was over, it was kind of like, what do we do with these tours now? We did them for one more year, and then they got shut down because it was like City Regina policy differences, Heritage Regina, they're the organization that ran them, policy differences, and they kind of went on hiatus. So I thought, well, I love doing these tours. I was the guide. So I decided that I'm going to make a little video game about the cemetery. And it's like almost a one-to-one, like reduced scale, pixelated version of the cemetery. The rails are the same places, the trees are the same places, the buildings are the same places, and the stories, which is the whole purpose of the game, are in approximately the same places too. There's like 30,000 graves in the cemetery. I didn't want to add 30,000 like little headstones in my game, so I think it's about still 200 or 300 headstones in the game. There's a lot of headstones in that game.
You said stories a lot in that. Is I guess kind of a twofold question. One, it seems like it's important. Why is it important? And then two, how do you end up finding these things? Like, why is learning these stories important for you, important for other people?
So one of the things, like I love Regina, it's a great city, but one of the things that really bother me about it is there is absolutely nowhere to find local history. We have the Civic Museum, which is great, but it's an eco museum, so it puts artifacts out into the city, which is really handy. But there's no location to really go and learn things, right? You go to like Saskatoon, they have the Boomtown Museum inside the Western Development Museum. You go to any kind of small town, they have a museum about that town. There's nothing about that in Regina. We have the Royal Sask, which is a great museum. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's nothing. It's not about Regina. So, like, let's say you wanted to learn about the Regina cyclone. There's nowhere to learn about that. You want to learn about the Regina Ride. There's nowhere to learn about that. You want to learn about the Regina Manifesto. You want to learn about the construction of Dark Hall. You want to learn anything. There's nothing out there unless you want to look up newspaper accounts or go to the library or like actually do heavy research to find something. So this game is to kind of highlight these stories that are otherwise not accessible. When I was in high school, like it was kind of like the conscious idea that there is no history in Canada. Like Canada's only 145 years old at the time, or 140. There's no history here, but there's so much history, not only in those 150, 140 years at the time, but like there's 400 years worth of history. You go back in Quebec City and Montreal, and even 1,000 histories if you go to the Maritimes. And First Nations culture and history goes back tens of thousands of years. But there's this idea that there's no history here, especially in Regina. And in fact, there is so much history in Regina that it's like I'm always finding new things that I had absolutely no idea about.
Yeah, for sure. So are you born and raised in Regina?
Yep. I never got out.
With all this traveling and stuff, do you always see like Regina as your home? You're always going to come back here, or maybe someday are you going to switch that up and like move somewhere else? Or
I've thought about that. Like I like Regina, but it can be so frustrating sometimes. And there's so much more to see in the world. I really enjoyed going out to the East Coast and the Maritimes. I really liked Kingston. Quebec City is nice. Even I went up to Yukon this past fall. It was beautiful up there. So like Regina is a great city. I don't want to spend my whole life here, but I'm turning 30 soon. I've already committed 30 years to it, so I don't know if I'm ever going to get out. But if in a perfect world, I would like to move away and just live somewhere else for a bit if I ever come back.
Yeah, it's really funny you said the East Coast too. That's like one of my things. If I tell people like if I could live somewhere else, it would probably be the East Coast. Like, but I honestly I don't really want to leave, and I don't know why or what's my attraction here. Matt, actually, here's a good question for you. Why do you stay here? Your wife and kids are not a good answer for that, but
you know what? Like, I quite like the calmness of it all. It's very different from where I grew up, the hustle and bustle. So for us, it just seemed logically we could move here and It's a great place to build a family. I sound like I'm working for the Saskatchewan Party right now. But no, it's a great place to live, right? You've got that sort of uniqueness of the city, and then just outside of it, like there's boundless and endless amounts of countryside, and like for me, it took a while to get used to that sort of. There's nothing till Winnipeg. There's nothing till Calgary. It's like if we drive anywhere in the UK, it's like a city after 40 minutes, another city, another city. A lot of cities that merge together. So it is kind of it's interesting, and my dad always refers to it as, you know, the land of opportunity, and there's still development that, you know, there's lots to do here that's whereas in England it's kind of overbuilt and it's already got its history. It's kind of interesting, Kenton, what you're doing and bringing out the history and stuff, because I mean, you're kind of right in that way. There isn't a lot of it out there, or a lot of familiar stories. And I think it's interesting coming from a young person, because you often think of older people kind of bringing these stories out. But I mean, the freshness and the youngness to it. Like, have you sort of found a niche in that sense, that you're one of these storytellers that's a lot younger than everybody else? Or
Yes, oftentimes. Always I get messages from people like, hey, do you know anything about this? I'm like, I'm only like 29 years old. How do I know what happened in the 1930s, right? But people will take me on Reddit all the time. Hey, you know anything about this? Anything about that? Like, yes, actually I do. I know a lot about that. So yeah, I find like everyone I talk to, usually 30 years older than me, but like who will know these things, and then they'll tell me, then I'll kind of pass it on, which is how you have to carry on stories when there's not like a museum or something. You have to do it orally.
That's interesting too. You know, even too, like just talking about age and stuff, I'm sure if these ladies ever listen to this, they'll hate me for it. But like, I've sort of known of you for a long time because of the blogging thing, and then started following you. I think I follow you on Twitter and Instagram. It was just sort of like that progression. But at the same time, there was people like, I think I'm going to mess this up, but I think it's Jen Smith Nelson was kind of doing this stuff. And then Jen Sharp was doing the food thing with it as well, and sort of bringing that up. And those two are having like quite some success now as well. They were also doing that before you. And then you sort of come along. Is there other people like who would inspire you with this, or like keep you going, or like do you aim to be like them or to be slightly different?
Jen Nelson's a great example. She's a really nice, wonderful person. Her and I have sat down for coffee many times. We've collaborated together a few times. So she's like a role model. I've always wanted to be like her. But in my mind, she is so much greater than I will ever be. So she's like, if everything was perfect and I was super successful, I'd be like her. Like when I see her hanging out with wolves and petting wolves in the parks, I'm like, that is amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And I know I'm getting up to the age like when she was really successful. I think she was in her mid-30s. I'm thinking I am nowhere close to her yet, but like that would be amazing to be like her. Also, Ashlyn George out of Saskatoon, she's huge. She's doing an amazing job, and I don't think I could ever be like her, because her industry, her niche is more like adventure, like skydiving, ziplining, snorkeling. She's at like a volcano park right now in Hawaii. Well, I'm more like prisons and asylums and camps, you know. But the success that they're having, I wish I could have that same level of success with my own topics.
Were you ever the Sask Wanderer?
No, and I've applied once, and people always think I am, but no, I never actually got it.
But with that said, I know you do some work with the province as well, Sask Tourism. How did that all come about? Like, how do you get into that?
So I don't work with them nearly as much as people think I do. We were going to do a collaboration of thing 2020, I think it was. And I was going to go up to the limestone crevices. They were going to pay for my gas. It was going to be like a collaboration thing. But then all travel got shut down. And that was like the first time we've ever actually like decided to collaborate on something. And I was so excited for it. And I ended up just going up there, forking the bill myself, which isn't that bad. But now actually we did just end up doing something together now, and the video will be coming out probably next week or something. It's an unboxing series I'm working on. and they gave me a box to unbox. So we haven't worked together that much. We're always kind of in the same sphere together, and it's something that I want to work with them more, and they seem to want to work with me more. So I'm sure it's just a matter of time before we do more stuff together.
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to switch paces here on you a little bit. It's not too far of a stretch, but all this stuff you do within a year. So I read your 2021 recap. How do you start at the start of your year and make like a whole plan, or how do you begin that sort of process?
No, I'm not that organized. I'm sorry. There's no magic to this madness. Usually, I go into the year feeling exhausted, and I think, should I quit this or should I keep going? And then once January kind of comes to an end, I'm kind of refreshed and I want to do it again, and all the content comes out. Sometimes stories come just out of the sky. Like last year, we just visited this old abandoned church north of Regina, and it was like this beautiful old stone structure where the roof had been burned off, and all was left with these stone columns and stone windows. And I wrote a whole article about it, and it blew up because people loved it. And that was something that I didn't know about until like 4 days earlier when I was reading a book, and I found this picture and thought, hey, where's that? Oh, that's actually really close to where I live. But other ones like the Unboxing Canada series I'm working on, that's something that I kind of had in the works for a few months now, trying to get that up and going. Usually it's like whatever comes out, the seasonal thing. Like if we ever have a folk festival or a winter eruption or whatever, I'll probably do something about that. I try to keep it like somewhat relevant, but the thing with content like that is once the event passes, it's no one really cares about it anymore until the next year.
Yeah.
So you try and think, what do you want to write about this year? But it's kind of whatever happens, especially the last couple of years. It's kind of like, well, we'll see whatever happens. We'll write about it.
Yeah. Another thing you write a lot about, or well, I mean, every travel blogger does, but like travel tips. So for like the regular Joe, so like myself, I do lots of fishing trips and stuff too. So like I think this stuff is like applicable to anyone, whether you're going out to take photos, going out fishing, going out specifically to be a travel blogger. What would be like your go-to tip or best advice you could give someone trying to just travel in general?
Probably do your research. I know that's a pretty broad one, but like with fishing, I went fishing for the first time, like seriously fishing, a couple years ago, and I went sturgeon fishing near Medicine Hat, and I caught these giant sturgeon, and I had no idea prior to that there was sturgeon near Medicine Hat, and that sturgeon were these giant prehistoric fish. Like I was completely oblivious to what I was catching and where to catch them. So stuff like that, look into these things. Some like if you can do fishing, you probably know the spots to go, but know when to go, what to catch, what to expect. You maybe know that a lake this time of year is going to be pretty empty of fish, or they've been fished out by now. Maybe try this other location, that kind of thing. Just make sure that you look into things. Otherwise, you end up like me, and you'll go somewhere and be disappointed because you didn't plan ahead. Like when I went to Yukon, I didn't realize it all kind of shuts down in September because that's when winter comes in. And it was like, oh, that's closed and that's closed and that's closed. I'm really glad I flew up here for a whole bunch of closed things. So do your research or you'll end up like me.
Yeah, for sure. Like when we do our little photographic thing too, like that's what we do too, is a lot of sitting on the internet. This is the track we're going to take, what's actually out there. Actually the church you mentioned as well, I actually found that church on I want to say it's not Google Earth is the one, because someone had posted a photo of it and I was like, oh, that's cool. I was just clicking around, right? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go out and do the same thing with this thing. Another thing I think you probably get asked again all the time, and again too, people, if you go to Kenton's website, all this stuff is there as well. He's sharing all this information with you. You'll have like his top 10 tips for traveling and whatever else, but the financial side of it, I always think is funny. Nick's going to really appreciate that I asked a finance question in this, but how do you actually end up affording to take these trips, to go to Mexico City and to wherever else you go that same year?
That can be pricey, right? Like certainly you can find deals. You can find hostels instead of hotels, or you can get Groupons or whatever to save money. When I went to Chernobyl, I went to Poland and then Ukraine and came back. And that trip, my thing was I'm going for a week. I think I was ended up being 8 days, a little bit longer because of the flights back and forth. 8 days, and I didn't want to spend more than $2,000, which is a lot. But you think about the flight itself, I have to fly to Calgary, that's going to cost $700 right there, or however much it's going to cost. But it's kind of budgeting, like how are you going to make this work, knowing that it could get really expensive. The trip to Yukon, for example, I just really wanted to see Tombstone in the fall, Tombstone Territorial Park in the fall. But as I was planning the trip, I realized this is going to get really expensive because car rentals are expensive up there, flights are expensive up there, hotels are more expensive up there. And that was like, I just want to see this, but it cost me more to go to Yukon for a week than it cost me to go to Ukraine for a week. So it's something that you have to look into, like, how can I do this better? When I went to Yukon, because it was fall, everybody's going to Yukon in the fall. So that's why there was no cars, there's no hotels, anything like that. So you think, well, when do I want to go? And when does everybody else want to go? And maybe I want to go a little bit after, a little bit before everybody else wants to go. So that's one easy trick to save money. Don't go at the perfect time.
Yeah, I read the article on that too. Just I don't know why, just something that appealed to me about it. And the first tip in your article about finances, I laughed like just uncontrollably at, because the in big bold writing it was sell all your stuff.
Yes.
That's what I feel like being a camera guy. That's the same thing. You sell all your stuff and put all your money towards camera stuff. Mm-hmm. Matt, can you attest to that?
I can vouch for that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Kind of sticking with that camera thing, I think this is actually a question I'm kind of curious how you're even going to answer this, Kenton, but would you consider yourself a camera guy?
I have a couple cameras. I have a couple different kinds of lenses. I have tripods. I have my drone. So I do have a couple different pieces of equipment. I don't nearly use them enough as I should. What I do when I do crack out the tripods, I usually do long exposure, either of traffic or of water or something of that sort. The drone is for, of course, aerial photography. I don't have like a wide lens or a macro lens. I only have like a nifty 50 and like a normal zoom lens.
Oh, wow.
So I do have a couple pieces, but I say I'm a camera guy, but I'm definitely a novice camera guy. I'm always learning new things. And whenever I sit down to do long exposure, it still takes me like 20 minutes to get the settings quite right, with the shutter speed and the light and everything. So I'm not as good as I could be, but I definitely am passionate about it with what I have.
Can I ask one?
No.
I was wondering, let me get in there. I was wondering, like, how'd you go about when you get to a place, like, how do you decide I'm going to fly the drone, or I'm going to do a long exposure, or I'm just going to take some stills? How do you sort of map your way around your shoot there?
Well, the drone thing is of course there's legislation about where you can fly it. So that's the first thing, right? Can I even fly it in this place? And then you want to kind of think about, where can I get this shot? So like when I was in just south of Whitehorse in a place called Miles Canyon, I really wanted a shot of the bridge that goes over the canyon and then the water underneath. And I took so many shots of that bridge from the different angles to try and find the right one. And I ended up taking one that I liked. But looking later, I'm like, no, it didn't turn out how I wanted. So it's trial and error. You have to think about it. Like, how is this going to translate on a flat screen where they don't have that depth perception? So like when I was out hiking, I took a picture of where I walked from. It looks like I walked nowhere. Like it looked like it was just a little trail up a hill, not up a half of a mountain, So you have to think about how can you get that angle, or how can you get that shot, and how is it going to translate on someone's phone or someone's computer on a I guess a 1D space as opposed to a 3D space. I guess 2D space versus 3D space.
Is that the sort of stuff you learn over time as well then? Because like I'm guessing that when you started out, you're probably like, hey, I'm going to do this travel blog thing. And you got halfway to it and you're kind of like, oh, I got to take pictures and like something's not working here and I got to learn something else.
Yeah. Well, my first pictures of Europe, especially of London, are all terrible. They're just like, I took a picture of like everything that was weird and unique, like maybe an odd statue on the corner or like spray paint or something. Just like, they're all terrible. So like I never show those pictures because they're just like, it was like so bad in my portfolio. But once you get better, like you see like, oh, here's St. Paul's Cathedral. How am I going to take a picture of this with these giant massive towers? Or here's a Tower Bridge or the London Eye, that kind of thing. So you learn the angles. I did take like a workshop too a couple years ago too, just to get better. But I find, especially when it comes to like buildings, like the front of the building is the best part, right? Because you see the facade and the doors and the windows, but it's always like lost in the picture. So I find it's better to take it from like an angle. So you get like the point of the building, you get the like the types of stone on the corner. I just find the light shines better on buildings from an angle. But that's something you just have to learn. Like, what's the best angle to take a picture of this building at? If you take it from the front, it's either going to take the whole picture up, or it's going to be like a very flat image, at least in my experience.
Yeah. With phones, how good they're getting. Do you think you'll get to the point like where you get rid of your camera gear and just use a phone?
I think eventually, like phones are updating and changing fast, and there's things that you can do with a regular camera you can't do with the phone just yet. Like with a regular camera, you can do a long exposure of like 30 seconds or longer. You can't do that with a phone, but I could see soon you can, because you can do now with a phone, I think 5 seconds. So it's like it's getting there. I love the idea of just hauling out a big camera and taking a perfect shot with it. It's not the same with a little phone, little dinky phone. I just like it feels more like amazing. Like I can't describe the word, having this piece of equipment to capture this perfect moment. Like if I'm getting married and we hire a photographer and they bring out a camera, like a phone instead of a camera, they're not going to be there. Like, I want a camera to take a picture of my wedding. So I think eventually that more people will go to phones than cameras, especially because they're cheaper. But I don't think it'll completely replace cameras, because cameras are just such a integral part of forever. Like that, people still use film cameras, right? So I don't see them going away anytime soon.
It's interesting you say the feeling. I think that's something Nick and I should dive into more one day, like just why it just feels good to hold a camera and shoot. I'm going to wrap this up. I kind of think like the last question I want to know from you. So you mentioned some of the stuff you have in your camera kit. You're obviously doing different things with it, with the Canadian Mysteries. You're shooting some video, with everything else. You're doing some photos and whatever else. So you got a lot of stuff going on. What is the one piece of gear you couldn't live without in your kit?
These days, it's my drone. I just love flying it over buildings, over people, over water, trees. And when it got rain damage in the fall and I could no longer fly it, it was just devastating. So that is like my favorite piece of equipment right now, not just because I don't have it and I really miss it, because it's so small and take amazing photos. Like drone photos, in my opinion, are just amazing. The things they capture from above is just incredible. So right now, that's my favorite piece of equipment.
What about something that you're maybe missing? Like, is there something that you're just like, oh man, that would add so much to a travel blog and I don't have it?
Yes, exactly. There's one thing. So my lens can't focus on stars. I don't have a good enough lens yet. So I see all these amazing pictures of like Northern Lights or of star photography, and I can't take those because I don't have a lens for it. I'm thinking, if I only had $1,000, I could buy this lens. I could get those photos. So that's one thing I think if I had that, I would do so much better. But I don't quite have it yet. But one day I'll get that lens.
The lens I use for my Astro stuff, it's a Rokinon, fully manual control stuff, 24 millimeter 1.4 on the f-stop, and I love that thing for Astro. Like, you can't believe just everything that comes off it's so much better. And I think it was like 600 American. I bought it from B&H, so it wasn't too bad. But yeah, by the time you get it here, it's just shy of $1,000.
Yeah, I want one, but it's just I don't want to pay that price.
Fair enough. Maybe you can find one used someday too. Like, I'm sure there's like a Sigma version or something like that. Cool, man. This has been good. It's been good meeting you. That's the other thing too. I feel like we were talking like we've been buds the whole time, but this is the first time I've actually ever met you aside from commenting on stuff on social media. So thanks for doing this, man. It was great to have you on. I think some of the stories were pretty good. I hope you had a fun time.
Yeah, it was a blast. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. And it's great meeting both of you as well. One thing I really wanted to do last year was collaborate more. So I was so happy you reached out. And if you ever want to do anything, just let me know, because I'm always trying to do more stuff with people, because I get my little own silo all the time. And I think that's not good. So I was really happy you asked me to be on your show. So thank you so much.
Yeah, well, I mentioned like chasing yesterday too. Like we should actually do like a little history collab on stuff and go out and combine the efforts. So yeah, someday we'll do it. I'll have to think of or if you come up with a good, like our thing's kind of like that rural stuff. So if you ever come up with a good one, just send me. You got all my contact now, and I'll probably do it. I'm always looking for people to do. I've been trying to get Matt to come out to shoot photos with me for like 3 years, and still hasn't happened.
We went for lunch once, I think. You know what? We got a minivan now, so there's no excuse. We can just load everybody up, leave the city.
That's perfect.
Let's go for it.
Yeah. Anyways, man, we'll let you go, let you get on for the night. Thanks again for doing this, and we'll talk to you later, Ken.
Not a problem. Have a good night. Thanks again for having me on.
You too. See ya. The interview was pretty good, I thought.
He is really good. He's well spoken, hey?
Yeah.
Really well spoken and passionate about it. You can tell right away when he's talking about it.
Yeah.
I haven't played this computer game, but I really want to play it now.
Yeah, for sure, eh?
Have you played it?
No, it's such a crazy, bizarre factoid. He actually, do you know what we did not do is we did not pump his tires. Like, so where people can catch up with Kenton is at KentonDeJong.com, I believe. You can Google his name and it'll come up. He's on Instagram at Kenton de Jong. If you can't find him under Kenton de Jong, you can find him under Kenton de Jong Travel. And yeah, literally every piece of social media you could possibly find the guy on. He is.
What I want to know is, can you play computer games with him or his own computer game? That would be really cool. I'd rather than chat to him on Twitter or whatever, we could just play computer games with him. The man himself that invented it.
Fantastic idea. I like it.
Okay, that's the next one.
Yeah, for sure. He's also doing a podcast now, podcast and to YouTube on like Canadian Unsolved Mysteries, I believe it is. It's fascinating stuff, man. You talk about his stories. Like, I have no idea like where they're getting this stuff from. It's incredible, actually. It's worth listening to just to hear some of these, like, again, you wouldn't believe these things happen in Canada, like he was saying. So with that said, thank you, Kenton, for coming on to the show. Hope you had a good time. Matt, your first interview, how'd it go for you?
I was pretty quiet in the back. Do you know, I'm probably not going to take a walk in Wascana Park again now without thinking about all the graves and the prison in there. So that's kind of interesting, hey? Right on the doorstep here.
Yeah,
things like that happening.
It's funny too. I just said first interview, and you do this stuff all the time with CBC, so it really wasn't your first interview.
I just listen.
Your first listen to Emery talk.
Yeah.
Even that's not true. You've listened to me talk way more than I should have all the time. Anyways, I think that's a good outro for tonight, a good wrap for tonight. So everybody, thanks for watching. Matt, is there any way you want to close this episode up?
I think it's closed. Nick can come back.
Look at that logo. Who is this guy? There you go. I hear you.
Okay.
I see you. Look at you, Matt Howard. Beautician of the year.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Loosen up a bit.
There he is, the man, the myth, the legend.
I don't know about that. Hi, guys.
We'll end it, and then Matt and I are going to record a whole other show, just the two of us yet tonight.
Okay.
He's going to cut around me, and he's going to put Nick in place.
Yeah.
That's why I've been pretty quiet, being like this.
Last episode, which hasn't come out yet, because Nick Lamb was also supposed to edit that episode.
Okay.
Nick Lamb, whole episode on his little earbuds for his thing. So he's got the big mic sitting in front of him like he's gonna use it. Nope, just his earpods.
You didn't?
Yeah, he didn't even know. Everything I'm saying right now is pure trash. I'm gonna cut this out.
Why not?
I don't know.
You sound like you're fanboying.
I do.
You know? I didn't know you were such a big fan. Hey, I just need to turn a light on so you can see my tiger a little bit better.
Just shine a light on the tiger. You just need the tiger.
This is the C100 Mark II.
Right.
So it's got the push focus at the front, which is nice. And it's got that really nice Canon profile there, which is great. I just love it. It's so good for what I need.
I'm trying to convince Nick to buy, what are they, R5C? The one we're supposed to be talking about. So he should have another C200 for sale for you.
Ooh. I wouldn't mind stepping up actually and getting that one.
Oh, Matt, I can walk you through it. Honestly, like I walk Nick through 90% of it too.
Guess what? Say hi to the camera.
What's up, little man? How are you?
Good.
That's good. You're going to bed? You don't want to go to bed, do you?
Yeah.
Hey, little lady.
Yeah, it's warm.
Hi.
Say hi.
Hi. What is this?
That's just the lights in the background that I'm using. Hey, that's my phone. Thank you very much.
Oh, man. That was great.